This meeting of the Norwood City Council is hereby called to order. Please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, as a body we congregate in these council chambers. We pray for thy divine guidance that we may do all things well, according to thy holy will. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mrs. Stickley.
Here.
Mr. Blair.
Here.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Here.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
Mr. Mumper.
We do have 6 members present. We have 2 requests to amend the agenda. The first is to add a Housing, Health, and Recreation Committee report under H1 and a letter from Robert Gatto and David Walters that would be added under Communication O number 1 regarding the C9 Trust contact person, and both of these are on your desk. Mr. Clark.
I move to amend the agenda as you stated.
Seconded by Mrs. Stickley. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to minutes of the previous meeting. We have the minutes from May the 10th, 2016 that were emailed to us. Mrs. Stickley.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We do have 2 requests to address council, but they are not on agenda items, so we will deal with those later on. So we'll move on to reports of standing committees of council. The first is a Housing, Health, and Recreation. Mrs. Hannerhan?
This is the committee report for Housing, Health, and Recreation, date May 23rd, 2016. To the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio, we, your Committee of Housing, Health, and Recreation, to whom was referred beehiving, building inspections, Norwood head shop, front yard structures. Beg leave to submit the following report. Beehiving scheduled another meeting for June 20th at 6:30 in council chambers, and we invite all interested to come and share their opinions on this. We discussed building inspections. Mr. Gear and Mr. Stoker were both present to answer questions concerning procedures in the building department concerning inspection complaints, orders, citations, and the verbiage. We also discussed the inability of residents have in reaching anyone in that department by phone and inconsistent office hours. I'm sad to report we did not come to any resolution on any of these issues, and everything remains in committee. Then we talked about the Norwood head shop and front yard play equipment. Mr. Moore sent a legal opinion stating that Mr. Stoker has the authority to interpret the code. The Health and Recreation Committee disagree with Mr. Stoker's interpretations on these issues discussed. The issues remain in committee.
And it's signed by...
Respectively submitted, Marilyn Hannerhan, chairperson, Brandon Blair, James Bonzel, and Tammy Stinley.
Mr. Clark.
Move to accept the committee report.
Seconded by Mr. Bonzel. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to third reading of ordinances. It's an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to effect a governmental electricity program with opt-out provisions pursuant to Section 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the Hamilton County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors. Mr. Bonzel.
I move we have the third reading of the ordinance.
Seconded by Mrs. Stickley. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have the third reading.
An ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to effect governmental electricity program with opt-out provisions pursuant to Section 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the Hamilton County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors.
Mr. Bonsall.
I move that the ordinance be approved.
Seconded by Mrs. Hanahan. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to second reading of resolutions. We have one, a resolution in support of new gymnastics program at the Richard E. Lindner YMCA. Mrs. Stickley.
I move that we have the second reading of the resolution.
Seconded by Mrs. Hanahan. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have the second reading.
Resolution in support of new gymnastics program at the Richard E. Lindner YMCA.
We have no introductory readings of ordinances or resolutions, nor administration reports. We do have two requests to address council. The first is Cynthia Zurwick. Oh, yes. And Jeff Jorling. If you can come forward and please give us your names and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council. For one who has a butchered last name, I try to make sure that that's correct.
I'm going to just pass these out. Just your map.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Cindy Zorowick, and I live at 4163 Forest Avenue, and this is my husband, Jeff Jorling. We live together, so. A lot of this is stuff I've said before, but and we're actually very, very tired. And honestly, we'd given up and had started looking at houses outside of Norwood, just like 3 of our neighbors across the street who could no longer deal with the speeding traffic on Forest. However, we've been encouraged by some of the newer members of the council to come in and try one more time. I've given each of you a map of all the 4-way stops in South Norwood. Notice that there's not one 4-way stop on Forest or Floral, but look at all the 4-way stops on Williams, which is deemed the through street in South Norwood. We're just really curious why there aren't any 4-way stops on Forest or Floral. We've been trying for years to get someone to listen to us in regards to the speeding traffic on Forest Avenue. We've attended a lot of meetings, sent emails, shared petitions that have been signed by every homeowner on Forest, and we've received no responses from the administration. When I was growing up, if there were kids on the street, there was always a 4-way stop at an intersection. Wasn't perfect, but definitely helped slow down the drivers on that street. My husband echoed the exact same sentiment. He grew up in East Hyde Park. I have a radar gun to record, believe it or not, to record the speed of drivers on Forest Avenue. Almost exactly 1 year ago, I recorded a man on a motorcycle speeding 71 miles an hour down Forest Avenue between Smith and Williams. On that same day, in an hour's worth of sampling of speeds of the drivers on that street, I recorded 71, 62, 60, 59, 54, 52, 50, 48, 46, with the average in that hour being between 40 and 45. That day, my neighbors declared that they were putting their house on the market. They have since moved. It is too easy to speed down Forest Avenue between Smith and Williams. It's a straight half mile, no curves, no bumps, no stop signs. A traffic engineer who completed a traffic study many years ago suggested that a traffic circle would be perfect for the intersection for Forest and Madison, and it would also help slow down the speed of the drivers. But he followed that with, "There's no way Norwood will fund that venture." And when we then asked him, would a stop sign help to slow down the traffic, he responded, yes, a stop sign would definitely slow down the traffic between the stop signs. But to this date, nothing has been done. Our question tonight is the same as the last meeting. Why does Norwood refuse to help slow down the cars on Forest, and why don't they care? This is not about the number of cars going down our street. It is about the speed of the cars going down our street and how the drivers on Madison can hardly see the cars or gauge the speed of the drivers that are coming down Forest. This is about the police officer, while at the site of an accident at the intersection of Forest and Madison, said to me, "I don't know why the city refuses to put a stop sign here." This is about a Norwood council member, Jane Bonsall's wife, nearly being killed at Forest and Madison intersection while riding her bike. We want the cars slowed down so we can live in a neighborhood where we can talk to and actually hear our neighbors. We want the children to be safe from speeding cars going down their residential street. These children who also go to school on Forest Avenue, where there are no stop signs for them to safely cross the street. There are elderly people on Forest who have a heck of a time crossing that street. We don't want a stoplight. This is a residential street, so treat it as such. And please do not put up one of those gigantic speed radar detectors. Please don't tell me that there's anyone in this room naive enough to think that people don't automatically slow down when they see those things a half a mile away. Again, we ask the city to help us slow down the traffic on Forest Avenue.
Questions? Mr. Bonso?
Would this be an appropriate time to refer something to a committee, or should that be under new business?
Probably new business.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for listening again.
Thank you.
Due to some of them.
Thank you. Next, we have Pastor Sonny James. You know the routine?
Yes. Good evening, Pastor Sonny James, right here in Norwood. I'm pleased to stand before council this evening and the residents of Norwood. First, before I get started, let me just say that on behalf of Norwood and how we as a community evidence that we are changing in many ways for the better, I attended a meeting on yesterday evening with the Housing Committee, and you know, I have to give credit where credit is due. The chairperson ran an excellent meeting. The council members were very attentive and very much all on the same page, and I want to commend you all for that meeting last night. I also, in my 13-point plan that I've given to the city months ago, one of the things that I've really harped on was having the residents of our community engaged and aware of anything we're doing before we make it official. And last night at the meeting, Tammy had mentioned, it would be a good idea to get the community's input. And I just wanted to stand publicly and applaud her. She's brand new on council, but we have to give credit where credit is due, and that was an awesome recommendation. So, Tammy, I just wanted to say thank you very much publicly for seeing how that's such a sensitive thing to a lot of residents, and people do care about that. And there are many council members that are agreeing with that, and I applaud that. Now, the main thing is this Friday, May 27th, we're having a huge summer kickoff at the YMCA, and I want to applaud the YMCA for their effort to partner with us to really make a strong effort to make something positive happen for our youth in Norwood. We have many of the businesses that are supporting this effort, making donations so that we can have a huge fun time. The youth of the community are going to play video games, and at the end, the winners of the video games, I'm going to award championship title belts, not toy belts. These are real championship belts that these kids are going to get. See, we want to increase their thought of who they are, and the way you do that is to actually have them engage in something that's bigger than what they can think or imagine. The other thing I'm really proud about our fire department and our police department and some of our city folks, and prayerfully we'll have council members joining with us. Andrew Clark, if the baby doesn't come with his wife, we pray that he'll be out there with us. But the fire department's bringing out the big trucks for the kids to enjoy. The youth in our community have agreed to actually participate in 3-on-3 basketball with our police. One of the biggest things in any community across the country, you've got to engage people on the same level. So these young people in our community have agreed to come together and play 3-on-3 basketball, not against our police officers, but with our police officers. So I encourage the citizens of Norwood to come out and support this wonderful event. Thanks to some of the fine businesses in Norwood, we'll have plenty of food there to eat, beverages, prizes and awards for the kids. Everybody will walk away with something, and I'm very proud of it. The next thing I want to encourage the businesses and the residents to do, I am calling for a Norwood Youth Day where folks that go into certain restaurants and businesses in Norwood on Tuesday, June 21st and Tuesday, July 19th, that as they go in there, I'm going to encourage the businesses to put up a sign that says they're in. And what that means is if you come in on those days, certain percentage of the proceeds will go back to help our YMCA as well as to help fund activities for our youth. So please look out for those dates and those locations. Again, I just want to encourage this council to face the difficult challenges that you all have, but face them together with residents, including the residents, because it will make a tremendous difference in how the residents perceive you and how they perceive the leadership of this fine community. I do thank you for your time today. If there are any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to call me. If the residents have any questions, you can email me at pastorsonnyjames@gmail.com or call me 513-487-8843. I want all of Norwood to come out and let's have a fantastic time together and make Norwood the awesome community that God intends it to be. God bless you all.
Pastor James, it says on your flyer that the outdoor pool is from noon to 6.
12 to 6 p.m.
Is that the entire event? Everything is from noon to 6 on Friday?
Yes, yeah. Actually, it's going to actually start a little bit earlier, the inside events like the video game challenge, but since we had that on the flyer, we just didn't bother it. So the main thing is you're just going to go between 12 and 6.
And I want to make sure that the email is correct, because up here it says anointed
Anointed Corner.
corner, but you have anoint, ANOINT.
On the flyer, there may have been a typo. It is Anointed Corner
Anointed
1
Corner. I just wanted
at
to-
Gmail. That's ANOINT.
Mr. Gears found that. I did not. I take no credit for that.
Very good, thank you. We didn't want to waste the paper, by the way.
I hear
So
you.
we figured all of you would overlook our type errors.
No, I just want to make sure that people get the
Yes.
right information.
Thank you. And if folks don't email to reserve a spot, it doesn't matter. We're just going to be ready to receive everybody anyway. So please come out and support us and support this initiative.
Yeah. And so what time do kids need to get there to participate in the video game challenge?
12 to 6. We're going to do everything between 12 and 6. And what's going to happen is if some of them email and register, that's fine. But if they don't, what we're going to do is just post up the brackets. And as they come in, we're going to pair them together and start the tournaments right away. And so we've got folks that are just ready to string this thing out from 12 to 6.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Thanks.
We'll move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Mr. Bonso?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So, I just wanted to thank Mr. Jorling and Ms. Zerowit for coming today. I did get a chance to talk with them a couple of weeks ago about the intersection Forest and Madison, and I talked to Mr. Jorling back when I was campaigning. He had explained his concerns about the intersection. In addition, Forest Avenue, it's nearly a half mile without a stop sign. It's a very wide street because traditionally it was a streetcar street. It was a street that was made to be wide because we had multiple forms of transportation going down it. So I would also like to note that there's a elderly lady that lives right across from Mr. Jorling. Her name's Debbie. Forgot her last name. I apologize. But she walks to Kroger, and she walks across Madison right at Forest, and she has a heck of a time sometimes crossing the street just because of some of the traffic and the speed, because it's harder for her to judge how fast these cars are going when they're down the street. So with all that being said, I would like to refer the issue of a stop sign at Forest and Madison to the Streets Committee. We have something else that we need to consider anyways, a streets plan and alternative funding for streets, so we haven't had that meeting yet, so I want to go ahead and refer this to the Streets Committee. I'd like to ask the clerk to help us out with that. And just so that we can look at this further and see if we can address any issues that the administration has with regards to that location.
So Public Safety, Streets, and Infrastructure is chaired by Mr. Mumper, and then Mr. Blair and Mr. Bonsoll are on that committee. So we will refer that to committee. We'll have to wait for Mr. Mumper to call a committee meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Mrs. Hanrahan?
Yeah, I would like to ask the clerk of council to obtain the employment contract with Jerry Stoker through a public records request for that housing, health, and recreation.
And we'll do that. Mr. Clark?
Just a couple events coming up. We have our next citywide prayer meeting on Saturday, June 4th. It's going to be at a different location this time. We're going to actually be at the Norwood Plaza parking lot, praying for the Hope Over Heroin event. That's where that'll be held, so we're going to meet there instead. And then if anybody is interested in getting involved with Hope Over Heroin, we have a volunteer meeting coming up on Monday, June 13th at 6:30. And this time it's going to be held at my church at Trinity Pentecostal Church at 2719 Norwood Avenue. So we'd love to have people volunteer and come out and find out more about it.
And the June the 4th prayer meeting, what time is that at
Oh, I'm
Norwood
sorry,
Plaza?
1 o'clock.
You might want to repeat that so we
Oh.
can hear it now.
I know, it's so loud. 1 o'clock on June 4th at the Norwood Plaza location for prayer, and then Hope Over Heroin meeting June 13th, which is a Monday at 6:30 at Trinity Pentecostal Church, which is 2719 Norwood Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other new business? Mr. Bonso?
Yes. So I've got two additional items. The first is some great news. So, I guess going against a 6-decade trend of population decline in the city of Norwood, the Census Bureau has released their population estimates for 2015, and our population increased approximately 2.7%, estimated from 2014 to 2015. I don't have the exact numbers, but 1950. The 1950 10-year census was the peak of Norwood city population, and that was also when we really started, demolishing a lot of our, downtown business areas, getting rid of streetcars, getting rid of, really making things a little bit less walkable than what it used to be. So I think it's really encouraging that we're now actually getting more residents into the city. I'm really excited about the future, and I hope that bodes well for Norwood.
That's good news. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the second item is at the Vineyard Central church that's in the old St. Elizabeth's building in West Norwood. They're having a community cookout at Cleveland and Carter on Saturday, I think it's the 28th. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. And everybody's invited, so we're providing some meats and different things, and nobody needs to bring anything, just come and meet neighbors. So we're really excited about that.
Cleveland and Carter?
Cleveland and Carter. There's a kind of a community garden that's kind of set up right there, so we'll be ready for them.
Thank you, Mr. Ponson.
Yeah, thank you.
And the other new business? Mr. Sanker?
Madam President, just I'm calling a finance meeting for this Thursday for those who can make it. I've been in contact with Mr. Stitt over the last couple of weeks. He's been working some odd hours, so this was the earliest that he was able to get together. So I'm going to try to do this Thursday at 6 for those who can make it.
Here in council chambers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Any other new business? We'll move on to communications. The first is a letter from Robert Gatto and David Walters regarding C9 Trust contact person.
Dear Madam President and members of Norwood City Council, we, the representatives of the City of Norwood pre-75 employees, request the City of Norwood appoint a C9 contact person from the city and advise us who that person is with their contact information in order to have dialogue with respect to our C9 trust agreement. As Norwood City Council and the City Administration are aware, the C9 trust agreement was adopted by the City of Norwood to reimburse City of Norwood employees who began working for the city prior to January 1, 1975, for pension medical contributions. At one time, Norwood pre-75 employees had comprehensive health care coverage while employed by Norwood, which continued into retirement. We were asked by the City of Norwood to enter into a C9 trust agreement to achieve financial stability for the City of Norwood. Under the C9 agreement, pre-75 employees gave up our comprehensive health care coverage and enrolled in pension medical coverage. We were to pay our pension medical premiums up front after which we would be reimbursed by the City of Norwood on a monthly basis. We entered into the C9 agreement in good faith and gave up our previous comprehensive health coverage with the expectation the city would hold up its end of the bargain. We are concerned. For many years, pension medical reimbursements made by the City of Norwood to pre-75 employees, their widows, widowers, and dependents have been late by several months. At present, the City of Norwood is now 28 months behind in reimbursement payments to many of our pre-75 employees, their widows, widowers, and dependents. Many have not received reimbursement payments since January 2014. Many pre-75 employees, their widows, widowers, and dependents are presently owed $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 or more each. We have made numerous telephone calls and left numerous messages for Norwood officials about our concerns. Nearly all of our calls and messages have gone unreturned. When we have managed to contact city officials, we have been given conflicting information by different city officials. We have been given conflicting reasons why reimbursements have been late. We have been given conflicting reasons why total reimbursements to each pre-75 employee now totals in the thousands of dollars. We have been given conflicting numbers as to the amount of funding the city has provided and plans to provide to the C9 Trust. The City of Norwood needs to appoint a contact person, a go-to person, if you will, and provide us with contact information for that person with whom we can have ongoing contact and from whom we can receive factual information from the City of Norwood about our C9 Trust agreement. Thank you, Robert Gatto and David Walters.
Much pleasure. Mr. Sanker.
I'd recommend the letter be received and filed and take into consideration their request, and if anybody has an interest in doing that, submit their names, and then I would imagine council could appoint somebody to be that contact person.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Blair. Motion on the floor is to receive and file the letter, take this under advisement, and have those who might be interested let council know, and we can act on it at another time, unless someone's just jumping up to do this right now.
I'm always okay with appointing Mr. Mumper for things like this, so.
Since he's not here. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We do have one absent member. Mr. Sanker,
Recommend we excuse the absent member.
seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Mr. Clark,
Move to adjourn this meeting?
seconded by Mr. Blair. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.